I simply say that I can't say that I'm very glad to see you because I can't see you. But I feel instinctively that you're extremely glad to see me. They're always glad to see me in America. So now, take a good look at me because I am the actual, real, original Bernard Shaw. Now, how do you like that?
To one biographer, I am a saint and an idealist. To another, a Don Juan with a woman in every theatre. My life has been a hell, but because I have kept the lid on, nobody has peeked into it. Whenever I have been left alone in a room with a susceptible female, she has invariably thrown her arms around me and declared that she adored me. If you have any doubts as to my normal virility, dismiss them from your mind. The truth about my private character is this. I have an Irishman's habit of treating women with a certain gallantry, and this national habit is rather apt to be taken seriously in matter-of-fact British circles. Don't talk to me of romances. I was sent into the world expressly to dance on them with thick boots. Women are nothing to me. This heart is a rock. They will make grindstones for diamonds out of it when I am dead.
Bernard Shaw was born in 1856 and died in 1950. And within that time, the life of women changed beyond all recognition. When he was a young man, only women of unusual courage and tenacity succeeded in breaking out of the cage men had made for them. But in 1889, Ibsen's Nora walked out on her husband, and the young Shaw leapt to her defense.
The domestic career is no more natural to all women than the military career is natural to all men.
Shaw was never a major propagandist for women's rights. His achievement was to create in his plays a portrait gallery of women unequalled in English since Shakespeare. To understand Shaw's attitude to women is to get very close to the center of his art. That is what this program will attempt to do. The first woman in Shaw's life was Lucinda Elizabeth Gurney, who married George Carr Shaw in 1852 and became Shaw's mother 4 years later. The marriage was a disaster. Mrs. Shaw had never been an affectionate woman, and she soon lost all interest in her husband and 3 children.
Technically speaking, I should say she was the worst mother conceivable. We children were abandoned entirely to servants, who were utterly unfit to be trusted with the charge of 3 cats, much less 3 children.
The effect on young Shaw of being brought up in this completely loveless household was very marked.
Though I was not ill-treated, the fact that nobody cared for me particularly gave me a frightful self-sufficiency, or rather a power of starving on imaginary feasts that may have delayed my development a good deal, and leaves me to this hour a treacherous brute in matters of pure affection.
But he had to endure not only the coldness of the Shaw household, but also more positive causes of friction between husband and wife.
When I was still about as tall as his boots, my father took me out for a walk. In the course of it, I conceived a monstrous, incredible suspicion. When I got home, I stole up to my mother and in awestruck whisper said to her, "Mamma, I think Papa's drunk." She turned away with impatient disgust and said, "When is he ever anything else?" I have never believed in anything since. Then the scoffer began. Oh, a devil of a childhood, rich only in dreams, frightful and loveless in realities.
Eventually, Mrs. Shaw left her husband and came to London to set up as a music teacher, and in 1876 her son followed her. When he arrived in London, he was a young provincial, painfully shy, totally ignorant of love or affection. For 9 years he was unemployed, indeed unemployable. Living on his mother's income from a bequest and her earnings as a teacher, he wrote 5 unsuccessful novels. In one of them, Love Among the Artists, written in 1881, he writes,
"Everybody commits folly from youth and want of experience, and I hope most people humour and spare such follies as tenderly as they can. My mother did not even laugh at them. She saw through them and stamped them out with open contempt."
During his 9 years of total failure, Shaw mostly lived apart, studying in the British Museum, conscientiously writing his 1,000 words a day. But in 1881, he met Alice Lockett, a middle-class girl training to be a nurse at Leighton.
"I cannot resist the impulse to write to you. Believe nothing that I say. I have a wicked tongue, a deadly pen, and a cold heart."
May I ask what was the object of your letter to me? All people are not machines. Some are capable of genuine feeling.
When I first met you, you were a typical atheist. Last night I heard a clergyman say of Mr. Bradlaugh, "He a sceptic? Not a bit of it. He is the most cocksure man in England." I immediately thought of you, the most cocksure woman in Walthamstow.
George Shaw, you consider yourself irresistible and are piqued because your base flattery has been without the usual results.
We are a pair of children, and petulant children should be petted and kissed into good humour. I am too big to be petted, but you are not too big to be kissed.
I'm sorry that our friendship is at an end. You are certainly entertaining and have taught me many useful things, and I thank you very much.
The affair remained platonic, and neither party was deeply involved. Yet even in his inexperienced handling of his first real relationship with a woman, we recognize him.
You are a novice at letter writing, I an expert. I am a novice at love-making, you an expert. Let us then improve ourselves by practice. Write to me, and I will make love to you, to relieve the enormous solitude which I carry about with me.
The loneliness, the feeling of having put on a brilliant display of himself, all point to other experiences with other women later in life. At the end of 1884, they drifted apart. Shaw's autobiographical notebook for 1884 contains the following note.
Set to work on a drama on a plot of William Archer's, who was to collaborate. I wrote 2 acts and dropped it.
Those 2 acts, with a third added 7 years later, became Widowers' Houses, Shaw's first play.
You had no right to speak to me that day on board the steamer.
Oh, I say. Come, it was you who spoke to me.
I only asked you the name of a castle. There was nothing unladylike in that.
Oh, of course not. Why shouldn't you? But it's all right now, isn't it?
Is it?
I suppose so. Blanche, oh, I beg your pardon for calling you by your name, but I hope I'm not detaining you.
I thought you were detaining me because you had something to say.
Not at all, at least nothing very particular. Another time, perhaps.
What other time? How do you know we shall ever meet again? Tell me now. I want you to tell me now.
Well, I was thinking that if we could make up our minds to, or not to, at least...
I don't think there's very much danger of you making up your mind, Dr. Trench.
I only thought... Dear Blanche. Oh, I thought I should never have said it. I believe I should have stood stuttering here all day if you hadn't helped me out with it.
I didn't help you out with it.
I don't mean on purpose, of course, only instinctively.
But you haven't said anything yet.
What more can I say than this?
Harry, when shall we be married?
At the first church we meet.
It is tempting to see in this the Alice Lockett who attracted Shaw. But in Blanche, even in the Blanche of the 1884 first draft, there is a quality of personality difficult to associate with the demure Alice.
What are you crying for?
You speak so brutal to me, Miss Blanche, and I do love you so. I'm sure no one else would stay and put up with what I have to put up with.
Then go. I don't want you. Do you hear? Go.
Oh, no, Miss Blanche, please don't send me away from you.
I hate the sight of you. Are those 2 gentlemen gone yet?
Oh, how could you say such a thing to me, Miss Blanche? Please.
Stop that noise, I tell you, unless you want me to kill you.
Oh, please let me go, Miss Blanche. You know you'll be sorry. You always are. Remember how badly my head was cut last time?
This virago has little in common with the student nurse from Leighton. She has very much more in common with Mrs. Jane Patterson, a widow who took singing lessons from Mrs. Shaw, and met Shaw himself in 1882 when he was 26 and she in her early 40s. In 1887, he wrote a story called Don Giovanni Explains.
At last a widow lady, at whose house I sometimes visited, and of whose sentiments towards me I had not the least suspicion, grew desperate at my stupidity, and one evening threw herself into my arms and confessed her passion for me. I was incapable of the brutality of repulsing her, and indeed for nearly a month I enjoyed without scruple the pleasure she gave me, and sought her company, whenever I could find nothing better to do. It was my first consummated love affair, and though for nearly 2 years the lady had no reason to complain of my fidelity, I found the romantic side of our intercourse, which never seemed to pall on her, tedious, unreasonable, and even forced and insincere except at rare moments when the power of love made her beautiful, body and soul.
He hadn't sought the new experience, nor did he value it highly. Within a month he was regretting the step, though not strongly enough to bring the affair to an end. All Shaw's letters to Jenny, but one factual note, were destroyed by her executor when she died in 1924. But some of her letters to him do survive. and show quite clearly that he experienced a sexual revulsion.
I sat long after you left me last night thinking over all you had said. When I put myself to bed, I could not sleep. I accept all you offer. It will be for you to prove that it was not the one thing that brought you here. That nothing is altered between us, really, except the thing you hold so cheap. It was a pity you ever used me other than you propose now. I should today be a happier woman. And yet, I don't know. I do know this, that you are outraging nature.
The letters tell a continuously sad story of a passionate woman at the crisis of middle age, completely at the mercy of a rather cold young man.
You have treated me very badly. I do not complain. It is only what I should have expected. When a woman does what I have done and expects either consideration or love from her lover, she is a fool. I am one, for I believed in you and loved you. I, alas, love you too much now.
She called here this morning distracted about my letter. There was a scene and much pathetic kissing and petting, after which she went away comparatively happy.
What kind of woman was she? Shaw was not in love with her, described her as sexually insatiable, wild-tempered, and suggests he only associated with her to gain experience that would help him as a writer. But her letters paint a rather different picture. A passionate, sometimes savage woman, but dignified and charming too. William Morris's daughter, May, confirms this impression.
What a fascinating and charming lady your friend, Mrs. Patterson, is. I wonder you profess to be so reluctant to introduce me to her. Did you think I should bore her so much?
But Shaw saw her in a different light. For him, she was Blanche Sartorius, a mixture of violence and eroticism, even more marked in the third act of Widowers' Houses, written after 7 years' experience of her passion for him.
I'm afraid I'm in your way, Dr. Trench. But I shall not intrude upon you any longer. You seem so perfectly at home that I need make no apology for leaving you. Harry, I want you to answer me a question. Look me in the face. Do you hear? Look me in the face.
Harry, what were you doing with my photograph just now when you thought you were alone? How dare you touch anything that belongs to me?
But Jenny's troubles did not end with Shaw's indifference to her passionate nature.
You ask me too much when you expect me to look with indifference on your attentions to other women.
He was now beginning to earn money as a critic and renown as a socialist, and he had blossomed into the famed Jaeger suit. Jenny was fighting a long, drawn-out but losing battle.
That one bit of unfaithfulness is as bad as 100. How could you? And after such lips as mine. It is a personal thing to her, but she must not poach on my preserves. You belong to me. She is an outsider, a latecomer.
She, the subject of Jenny's greatest anger during 1887, was Mrs. Annie Besant, the famous atheist and social reformer. But Jenny didn't know the half of it. In addition, Shaw was paying great attentions to May Morris, not to mention Geraldine Spooner and Grace Gilchrist, and an unknown Miss Consuela, all of whom figure briefly in his diary. At the same time, he was being hotly pursued by Mrs. Hubert Bland, better known as E. Nesbit, the poetess and writer of children's stories. H.G. Wells describes her situation.
She ran an easy-going, bohemian household at Well Hall, Eltham. The astounded visitor came to realize that most of the children were not Edith Nesbit's, but the results of Bland's conquests. That young Miss So-and-so, who played badminton with a preoccupied air, was the last capture of Bland's accomplished sex appeal. All this Edith Nesbit not only detested and mitigated and tolerated, but presided over.
Shaw gave her little encouragement, but the pursuit continued for several months, including staged fainting fits by the lady at Fabian meetings. She published a poem in the socialist periodical Today, purporting to be inspired by Burne-Jones' fashionable picture, The Depths of the Sea, but really, as most of her fellow Fabians guessed, an erotic fantasy on the subject of George Bernard Shaw.
She saw him, out of reach as you I see, and yearned for him with all her body sweet. Her lithe, cold arms and chill, wet bosoms beat, vowed him her beauty's unillusioned shrine. So I, seeing you above me, turn and tire, sick with an empty ache of long desire, to drag you down, hold you, make you mine.
In the 20s, when he was nearly 70, Shaw threw a glance back to this unhappy episode.
I remember a well-known poetess, now no more, saying to me when I refused to let her commit adultery with me, "You had no right to write the preface if you are not going to write the book."
It is difficult to believe that he was quite as naive as he pretends. May Morris was another victim. Shaw's political work brought him into regular contact with her, and his attitude to her may be guessed from a letter she wrote in 1886.
Your resolution, when we became acquainted, not to make love, was most judicious and worthy of all praise. Let us be comrades by all means. I salute you, friend Shaw.
He was clearly once more engaged in the fascinating game, what he called his Irish gallantry. In 1936, he gave a typically Shavian version of the story.
One Sunday evening, when she came from the dining room into the hall, I looked at her, and she looked at me very carefully, and quite deliberately made a gesture of assent with her eyes. I was immediately conscious that a mystic betrothal was registered in heaven. It did not occur to me even that fidelity to the mystic betrothal need interfere with the ordinary course of my relations with other women. I made no sign at all. I had no doubt that the thing was written on the skies for both of us.
But May was certainly unaware of the writing in the sky. So much so that in 1890 she married Henry Sparling, a protégé of her father's in the Socialist League. Shortly after, Shaw accepted an invitation to convalesce with the young couple after an illness.
The violated betrothal was avenging itself. It made me, from the first, the center of the household. Her legal marriage dissolved, as all illusions do, and the mystic marriage asserted itself irresistibly. I had to consummate it or vanish. I vanished.
Shaw's fantasy life resulted in tragedy for May. Her husband left her, and finally she divorced him. Perhaps the best comment is May's own from an early letter.
You credit me with subtleties and coquetries of which my dense brain is innocent.
In 1936, when she was 73 and had never remarried, he published his flippant account of her. Her reaction was sad but restrained.
As to our harmless personal relations, I should have been inclined to let them lie unsung, on the grounds that no one cares a hang about me.
Of Shaw's relationship with Mrs. Besant, we know little more than we can learn from Jenny's jealousy. And luckily for Shaw, Jenny found a packet of Mrs. Besant's letters.
Her letter told me more than enough. You have encouraged her, that is obvious, or she would never have written so. It's loathsome to think of what you must have done. Kissed and mauled her about. How could you? She is at it again without the excuse you found for her of ignorance for me. But for all, she'll be a worse habit than me.
Perhaps Jenny was right. Shaw asserted that Mrs. Besant proposed a kind of secular marriage with him that was worse than all the vows exacted by all the churches on earth, and he dropped her.
I returned her all my letters and she mine. Reading over her letters before destroying them rather disgusted me with the trifling of the last 2 years with women.
By this time, he was notorious as an incorrigible philanderer, which perhaps added to his reputation as the destroyer of all the sacred images. But it cut no ice at all with Beatrice Webb.
Silly, these philanderings of Shaw's. He imagines that he gets to know women by making them fall in love with him. Just the contrary. He idealizes them for a few days, weeks, or years, and then has a revulsion of feeling. He never fathoms their real worth, nor rightly sees their limitations. But in fact, it is not the end he cares for. It is the process.
Meanwhile, Jenny, now nearly 50, was still hanging on.
It's hard to be satisfied, my dearest, with so little. I half hoped to see you last week. You hurt and wound me. You like doing it. And then you make me forget all the brutality in your arms.
But Jenny's days were numbered. In 1890, Shaw met an intellectual actress, Florence Farr, and fell in love with her almost at once.
My dear Mrs. Williams, this is to certify that you are my best and dearest love, the regenerator of my heart, the holiest joy of my soul, my treasure, my salvation, my rest. Also to observe, incidentally, that Wednesday is the nearest evening that shows blank in my diary. Yours truly, Joseph Mazzini Walker.
Shaw spent a great deal of time with Florence Farr, especially during her success as Rebecca in the first performance of Rosmersholm in England. But then, Jenny Patterson returned from a Far Eastern holiday.
In the evening, I went to F, and J.P. burst in on us very late. There was a most shocking scene, J.P. being violent and using atrocious language. At last I sent F out of the room, having to restrain J.P. by force from attacking her.
This scene, almost entirely verbatim, became Act 1 of his second play, The Philanderer.
Oh, this is charming. I've interrupted a pretty tete-a-tete. You!
Julia, oh, this is too bad.
What are you doing up here with that woman, you scoundrel? Oh, Leonard, you've driven me to desperation. I'll not bear it. She shall not have my place with you. I don't care. You belong to me and she knows it.
I think you had better let me take you home, Julia.
I will not. I shall stay here until I have made you give her up.
Mrs. Tranfield, I think you had better go into another room.
She shan't. She shall know how you have been in love with me. How it is not 2 days since you kissed me and told me that the future would be as happy as the past.
Go.
Get her away as soon as you can, Leonard.
In The Philanderer, Shaw summed up his 8 years of experience with women and laid the foundations of his mature philosophy. The two women in the play are the two images of the female that dominated his imagination and populated his later work. Julia, the passionate female predator; Grace, the dignified idealization of all the female virtues. The Philanderer himself, like all Shaw's mature lovers, spends most of his time running away.
You have my heart in your hands. Break it. Throw my happiness out of the window.
Leonard, does your happiness really depend on me?
Absolutely. Ah, no. Why should I lie to you? My happiness depends on nobody but myself. I can do without you.
So you shall. Thank you for the truth. Now I will tell you the truth.
Oh, no, please don't. As a philosopher, it's my business to tell other people the truth. But it's not their business to tell it to me. I don't like it. It hurts.
It's only that I love you.
That is not a philosophic truth. You may tell me that as often as you like.
At the moment when Grace demands involvement, the Philanderer draws back. Shaw did not love Jenny, but he needed her, and the knowledge she would bring him if he was to mature as a man and a writer. In a later letter, Jenny quotes his own words back at him, a kind of apology to her, which became the last act of the Philanderer.
I see, plainly see, that I have played a very poor part for some time past. In fact, have done you the only bad turn that was within my power. I have sacrificed you, and am, so far, the better for it. But you are the worse. All this proclaims me base. I should have fought for you, been strong for you.
No. Never make a hero of a philanderer.
In 1893, Jenny passed out of his life. But her influence on Shaw remained, breeding in him a dislike of consummated sex, and leading to a view of womankind that was to become the center of his philosophy. For a short time, Shaw was overwhelmingly in love with Florence Farr, but eventually his idealization turned to distaste.
I hereby warn mankind to beware of women with large eyes and crescent eyebrows. I declare before creation that you are an idiot, and that there has never been, can never be, is not now, nor in any yet to be discovered fourth dimension of time ever shall be, so desperate and irreclaimable an idiot.
They saw less and less of each other, and within a few years Florence Farr was closely associated with another Irishman, W.B. Yeats. She performed some of his verse plays and cantillated his poetry to the accompaniment of the psaltery. Shaw's advice to her about Yeats was characteristically abrupt.
Do not be misled by sloppy-minded lunatics.
But even before Florence Farr disappeared from the scene, his affections were straying towards another actress. At dinner, after the first performance of The Doll's House, Shaw sat next to Janet Achurch.
Imagine the effect of being suddenly magnetized, transported, bewitched by a wild and glorious young woman who, fortified against all reprisals by a happy prior attachment, simply amused herself by ruthless and careless manslaughter.
The happy prior attachment was Janet's husband, Charles Charrington, to whom she was devoted. Yet this was perhaps an even greater incentive to Shaw. Here was a woman who could be safely wooed without any danger of further involvement. Like so many of his characters, he began to make a virtue out of his personal necessity.
Do you know anyone who will buy for twopence a body for which I no longer have any use? I have made tolerable love with it in my time, but now I have found nobler instruments, the imagination of the poet, the heart of a child, all discovered through the necessity of making my way to an innocent love for Janet.
The idealization grew richer and deeper, and as always when Shaw was moved by a woman, it began to become a play, a fantasy projection of Shaw's relationship with Janet and her husband. Candida has to choose between her respectable clergyman husband and the wild young poet. She chooses the weaker and explains her choice.
Ask James's mother and 3 sisters what it cost to save James the trouble of doing anything but be strong and clever and happy. Ask me what it cost to be James's mother and 3 sisters, wife, mother to his children, all in one. Ask Prosy and Maria how troublesome the house is, even when we have no visitors to help us slice the onions. I build a castle of love and indulgence for him, and stand sentinel always to keep vulgar little cares away. I make him master here, though he does not know it, and could not have told you a moment ago how it came to be so.
It's all true. Every word. What I am, you have made me. The labor of your hands, the love of your heart. You are my wife, my mother, my sisters. You are the sum of all loving care to me.
Am I your mother and sisters to you, Eugene?
Never. Out then into the night with me.
The lonely poet is a reflection of Shaw's own inability to make contact with people other than through his imagination. Candida is the first of a series of idealized mother figures that recur in Shaw's plays. But the reality of Janet was severe. She became addicted to morphine and later heroin.
I am going to make myself disagreeable. You are coming back to your weak, wicked old self, your brandy and soda self, your fabling, pretending, promising, heavy-eyelidded, morphia-injecting self. All through your illness you were beautiful and young. Now you are beginning to look, not nourished, but steel yourself for another savage word, bloated. No use, dear Janet. Let us drop the subject and say goodbye, whilst there is still some Janet left to say goodbye to. I held up a mirror in which Janet was beautiful as long as I could, in private and in print. I am growing old and cowardly and selfish. It is sufficient that I loved you when I was young.
She played Candida all over England, but morphia was winning. She became thin and drawn, and in 1916 she died at the early age of 51. Shaw always loved her and was very moved at her death. Charrington wrote to him.
She wanted her arm, which had swelled terribly, cut. There were 51 needles in the arms, though years ago 15 had been removed. I gave stronger and stronger doses of morphia to the end. She died in my arms and looked more peaceful than she had done for years.
Soon after Candida was written, Shaw was wooing another, greater actress, Ellen Terry. This relation began where the relation with Janet left off. It was conducted entirely by letter.
I am not to be your lover, nor your friend, for a day of reckoning comes for both love and friendship. It is only when I am being used that I can feel my own existence.
I'll wait till you need me, and then I'll mother you. That's the only unselfish love.
I vow that I will try hard not to spoil my high regard by any of those philandering follies which make me so ridiculous with women. Only do as you have hitherto done with so wise an instinct. Keep out of my reach.
Would you, if we met, have a horrible dislike of me when you found me such an old thing, and so different to the Ellen you've seen on the stage?
Beware. If you allow yourself to be left alone with me for a single moment, you will certainly throw your arms around me and declare you adore me. And I'm not prepared to guarantee that my usual melancholy forbearance will be available in your case.
For 3 years, Shaw used Ellen Terry as a kind of mother confessor, telling her his problems and trying to persuade her to perform his plays. She was a creature who existed only in his imagination, and he allowed himself to fall in love with her, pouring out torrents of Shavian compliments and longings in their almost daily letters. He was now 41, and well aware of his own nature.
It's not the small things that women miss in me, but the big things. My pockets are always full of the small change of love-making, but it is magic money, not real money. Mrs. Webb, who is a remarkably shrewd woman, explains her freedom from the fascination to which she sees all the others succumb by saying, "You cannot fall in love with a sprite." And Shaw is a sprite in such matters, not a real person.
Ellen's opinion was much the same.
If you pretend only, someday it will never be able to be real.
Shaw had fled from Jenny and Florence Farr, with whom he had attempted to make it real. He could be much more himself with his fantasy Janet, his imaginary Ellen. It was inevitable that he should write a play for her. To his horror, she turned it down.
No one but Shaw could have written the last play. But it's not the sort of play for me in the least. I couldn't do this one, and I believe it would never do for the stage. Mrs. Pat for Lady C.
Shaw was used to rejection slips, but this saddened him.
Alas, dear Ellen, is it really so? Then I can do nothing for you. I honestly thought Lady Cicely would fit you like a glove. Either I am mad, or you are mad, or else there is an impassable gulf between my drama and your drama.
The last reason is the likely one. How could a theatre which was currently exhibiting the sign of the cross take Shaw's charade-like parable of justice and revenge seriously? But Shaw had done his work well.
What are you doing there, madam?
Mending your coat, Captain Brassbound.
I have no recollection of asking you to take that trouble.
No, I don't suppose you even knew it was torn. Some men are born untidy. You cannot very well receive Sidney L. What's-his-name with your sleeve half out.
I don't know how it got torn.
You should not get virtuously indignant. It tears more clothes than anything else.
Do you forget, there is such a thing as justice.
Oh, if you're going to dress yourself up in ermine and call yourself Justice, I give you up. You are just your uncle all over again. Only he gets paid £5,000 a year for it. You do it for nothing.
You twist my words very cleverly, but no man or woman has ever changed me.
Dear me.
I never change my mind.
Oh. Nothing will ever convince me that you are as pig-headed as that.
Pig-headed?
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. Firm, resolute, unalterable. Stonewall Jackson, that's the idea.
You are laughing at me.
No, trembling, I assure you. Now, will you try this on for me?
Take me for a fool, I think.
No, all men look a little foolish when they're feeling for their sleeve.
Ellen Terry liked the play more as she got to know it. She eventually played the part in 1906 and subsequently toured it. But before that, the ideal had become reality. Going under the stage at the Strand Theatre to congratulate the cast, Ellen met Shaw by accident. From this time, the main body of their regular correspondence ceased.
They say you could not bear me when we met that one time under the stage.
Shaw strenuously denied that he had been disillusioned by meeting her. But Ellen had her own ideas. She knew she could not live up to his imagination. As she got older, she got less work, and even made 1 or 2 films.
She asked me why I did not give her some work in the theatre. I do not expect leading parts, she said. I am too old. I am quite willing to play the charwoman. What would become of the play, I said. Imagine a scene in which the part of a canal barge was played by a battleship. It was unanswerable, and we both, I think, felt inclined to cry. She became a legend in her old age, but of that I have nothing to say, for we did not meet, and except for a few broken letters, did not write, and she never was old to me. Let those who may complain that it was all on paper remember that only on paper has humanity yet achieved glory, beauty, truth, knowledge, and abiding love.
The painter, Bertha Newcomb, whom Shaw briefly fascinated in the 90s, spoke of his dislike of the sexual relation, and this he confirmed to Ellen Terry.
What people call love is impossible, except as a joke between strangers meeting accidentally at an inn or in a forest path. Why, I dare not, for my life's happiness, make love to my own wife. A delusion, Ellen, all this love romance. That way madness lies.
Shaw married Charlotte Payne Townsend, a wealthy Irish heiress aged 41 on the 1st of June, 1898. She had one thing strikingly in common with her husband.
I had a perfectly hellish childhood and youth. My mother could not bear opposition. If it was offered, she either became violent or she cried. Well, I needn't go on. But my own home life made me firmly resolve never to be the mother of a child who would suffer as I have suffered.
Shaw met her at a Fabian summer school in 1896.
I am going to refresh my heart by falling in love with her. I love falling in love, but mind, only with her, not with the million. So someone else must marry her if she can stand him after me.
But by the end of the year, Shaw himself was talking of marriage.
Well, shall I marry my Irish millionairess? She believes in freedom and not in marriage, but I think I could prevail on her. And then I should have ever so many hundreds a month for nothing.
Why was Shaw now contemplating marriage, even if only semi-seriously? What was different about Charlotte Payne Townsend? It would be naive to pretend that the money did not attract Shaw, but perhaps he also saw in Charlotte something he recognized.
Don't fall in love. From the moment you can't do without me, you're lost.
Charlotte was, like himself, shy, reserved, distrustful of emotion. She lacked only the flamboyant exterior, the created personality of G.B.S., with which Shaw hid his loneliness from the world. Yet Shaw was uncertain, and wrote to Ellen Terry.
She doesn't really love me. The truth is, she is a clever woman with plenty of romantic imagination. She happened to read the quintessence of Ibsenism, in which she found, as she thought, freedom, self-respect, and so on.
If she doesn't dote on the quintessence of you, she'd better marry your book. How very silly you clever people are. Fancy not knowing.
Shaw didn't know, and the relationship dragged on for more than a year. Finally, Shaw had a physical breakdown through overwork. Charlotte rushed back from an Italian holiday to nurse him, and they married almost at once. It seems likely that the marriage, which lasted for 45 years, was never physically consummated. St. John Irvine describes her as a vestal virgin, with a horror of sexual relations, and Shaw himself spoke of their marriage the same way.
As man and wife, we found a new relation in which sex had no part.
So, in a sense, Shaw had found what he was looking for in marrying Charlotte. A way of living where each remained separate without making great emotional demands. But such a marriage has its price. After her death in 1943, Shaw admitted,
"Of all the women I have known, and I have known many, I knew Charlotte least of all."
He was now secure financially, sure of his genius as a playwright. Between 1901 and 1903, he wrote his definitive exposition of the relationship of men and women, man and Superman.
Have you ever read Maeterlinck's book about the bee?
I am not discussing literature at present.
Be just a little patient with me. I am not discussing literature. The book about the bee is natural history. It's an awful lesson for mankind. You think that you are Anne's suitor, that you are the pursuer, she the pursued, that it is your part to woo, to persuade, to prevail, to overcome. Fool. It is you who are the pursued, the marked down quarry, the destined prey. You need not sit looking longingly at the bait through the wires of the trap. The door is open, and will remain so until it shuts behind you forever.
I wish I could believe that, vilely as you put it.
Why, man, what other work in life has she but to get a husband? It is a woman's business to get married as soon as possible, and a man's to keep unmarried as long as he can. You have your poems and tragedies to work at. Anne has nothing.
I cannot write without inspiration, and nobody can give me that except Anne.
Well, then you better get it from her at a safe distance. Petrarch didn't see half so much of Laura, nor Dante of Beatrice as you see of Anne now. And they wrote first-rate poetry, at least so I'm told. They never exposed their idolatry to the test of domestic familiarity, and it lasted them to their graves. Marry Anne, and at the end of a week you'll find no more inspiration in her than in a plate of muffins.
You think I shall tire of her?
Not at all. You don't get tired of muffins, but you don't find inspiration in them. And you won't in her. When she ceases to be a poet's dream and becomes a solid 11-stone wife, you'll be forced to dream about somebody else. And then there will be a row.
This sort of talk is no use, Jack. You don't understand. You have never been in love.
I've never been out of it. Why? I'm in love even with Anne. But I am neither the slave of love nor its dupe. Go to the bee, thou poet. Consider her ways and be wise.
All the Shavian preoccupations are here. The escaping man, the female predator, the destruction of the concept of romantic love. Lovers in Shaw are always adolescent. The idea of mature love does not enter into his scheme of things. His experience had been otherwise.
I may miss the green-eyed Charlotte occasionally, but then I think of the other Charlotte, the terrible Charlotte, the liar in wait, the sole hypochondriac, always planning a nice, sensible, comfortable, selfish destruction for me.
Tanner thinks Anne is in love with Octavius, and does not even realize that the web is being woven for him.
I know a poor wretch whose one desire in life is to run away from his wife. She prevents him by threatening to throw herself in front of the engine of the train he leaves her in. That is what all women do. No woman shall ever enslave me like that.
I assure you, Jack, I don't mind your queer opinions one little bit.
That's the danger of it. I know you don't mind. The boa constrictor doesn't mind the opinions of the stag one little bit once she has got her coils around it.
Oh, now I understand why you warned Tavy that I am like a boa constrictor. Doesn't it feel nice and soft, Jack?
You scandalous woman. Will you throw away even your hypocrisy?
I'm never hypocritical with you, Jack. Are you angry? Perhaps I shouldn't have done that.
Prudery. Why should you not, if it amuses you?
Well, because I suppose what you really meant by the boa constrictor was this.
Magnificent audacity. Now, just to think, that if I mentioned this episode, not a soul would believe me, except the people who would cut me for telling. Whilst if you accused me of it, no one would believe my denial.
You are incorrigible, Jack. But you should not jest about our affection for one another. Nobody could possibly misunderstand it. You do not misunderstand it, I hope.
My blood interprets for me, Anne. Poor Rikki-Tikki Tavi.
You're surely not so absurd as to be jealous of Tavy.
Jealous? Why should I be? But I don't wonder at your grip on him. I feel the coils tightening round my very self. Now, you are only playing with me.
You think I have designs on Tavy?
I know you have.
Take care, Jack. You may make Tavy very unhappy if you mislead him about me.
Never fear, he will not escape you.
I wonder, are you really a clever man?
Why this sudden misgiving on the subject?
You seem to understand all the things I don't understand, but you're a perfect baby about the things I do.
I know very well what is going to happen to poor Tavy.
I should laugh at you, Jack, if it were not for poor Papa's death. Mind, Tavy will be very unhappy.
Yes, but he won't know it, poor devil. He is 1,000 times too good for you. That is why he is going to make the mistake of his life about you.
I think men make more mistakes by being too clever than by being too good.
In this play, the women make mincemeat of the men. What Shaw gives us, in the guise of comedy, is the mechanical working out of nature's design. He presents this as a philosophical statement in the discussion in Hell between Don Juan and Donna Anna.
I came at last to the worship of woman.
Juan?
Yes. I came to believe that in her voice was all the music of the song, in her face all the beauty of the painting, and in her soul all the emotion of the poem.
And you were disappointed, I suppose?
I ran away from it. I ran away from it very often. In fact, I became famous for running away from it.
Infamous, you mean?
I did not run away from you. You blame me for running away from the others.
Nonsense, man. You're talking to a woman of 77 now. If you had had the chance, you would have run away from me, too. Of course, you all want to marry lovely incarnations of painting, poetry, and music. But you can't have them because they don't exist. If flesh and blood is not good enough for you, you will have to go without, that's all. Women have to make do with flesh and blood husbands. And little enough of that, too, sometimes. You will have to make do with flesh and blood wives.
My dear lady, you have put my whole case against romance into a few sentences. When I stood face to face with woman, every fiber of my clear, critical brain warned me to spare her and save myself. My morals said no, my conscience said no. My ear practiced on 1,000 songs and symphonies. My eye exercised on 1,000 paintings, tore her voice, her features, her color to shreds. I caught all those telltale resemblances to her father and mother, by which I knew what she would be like in 30 years' time. the visions of my romantic reveries, in which I trod the plains of heaven with a deathless, ageless creature of coral and ivory, deserted me in that supreme hour. I remembered them and desperately strove to recover their illusions, but they remained the emptiest of inventions. Whilst I was in the act of framing my excuse to the lady, life seized me and threw me into her arms as a sailor throws a scrap of fish into the mouth of a seabird.
But from the beginning, in Shaw's imagination there had been two women, the predator and the ideal woman of his dreams. His dream had become a solid 11-stone wife, as unromantic as his philosophy could wish. But he, like Tanner, could not keep his dreams quiet, or forget the ideal woman of his imagination. In 1912, after 14 years of marriage and aged 56, it suddenly seemed to him that he might have found her.
I solemnly protest that when I went into that room in Kensington Square, I was a man of iron. And in 30 seconds... Oh, Stella, if you had a rag of decency, it couldn't have happened. Is this dignified? At my age, a driveller, a dotard.
Mrs. Patrick Campbell had taken over from Ellen Terry as the leading actress of the London stage. Shaw had written Pygmalion to exploit what he called her Italian peasant quality. He read the play to her and set about the old Shavian game.
Cruel, stony-hearted wretch, snatcher of bread from a starving child, how had you the heart? I want my plaything. I want my virgin mother enthroned in heaven. I want my Italian peasant woman. I want my inspiration, my folly, my happiness, my day's wage, my night's dream, my darling and my star.
All of which Mrs. Pat took as it was intended.
You didn't really think that I believed you came to see me because you were interested in me. I knew it was Liza, and I was delighted you should be so businesslike in such a bewilderingly charming way.
But flirting is a dangerous game, even when you are as experienced at it as Shaw was. Suddenly, he fell in love with her, and for him, the joking and gallantry were over. Charlotte had to be considered.
The worst of it is that all our telephone conversation was overheard, and the effect was dreadful. It hurts me miserably to see anyone suffer like that. I must, it seems, murder myself, or murder her. I throw my desperate hands to heaven, and ask why one cannot make one beloved woman happy without sacrificing another. We are all slaves of what is best within us and worst without us.
Now it was in earnest as far as Shaw was concerned.
It is past letter writing with me. There are things one cannot put on paper.
But Mrs. Pat was hardly aware of the change. Shaw was Shaw, and she had her own private life beyond him.
D.D. asked me whether you made love to me, and I said you made advances.
But Shaw was getting too persistent. Mrs. Pat went to the sea, instructing him not to follow. He did follow her. At a hotel he found her gone, and a note left for him.
Go wherever you like, but don't stay here. Please don't make me despise you.
Jenny Patterson was revenged with a vengeance. Shaw took refuge behind GBS and a barrage of words.
Very well, go. The loss of a woman is not the end of the world. Bah! You have no nerve. You have no brain. You are the caricature of an 18th century male sentimentalist. A hedda-gabbler titivated with odds and ends from Burne-Jones' ragbag. Go, then. The Shavian oxygen burns up your little lungs. You have wounded my vanity, an inconceivable audacity, an unpardonable crime.
But Mrs. Pat saw the true point.
Why do you go on scolding me? Because I am the woman I am, and not the woman you would have me be.
Of my 57 years, I have suffered 20 and worked 37. Then I had a moment's happiness. I almost condescended to romance. I seized handfuls of withered leaves and said, I accept them for gold. And now there is that desolate strand, and the lights of Ramsgate, that might have been the campfires of the heavenly host on the celestial mountain.
But they did work together. Pygmalion was a great success, and Shaw retreated back into his shell. Charlotte took command again, and their affection and companionship reasserted itself. Not surprisingly, Mrs. Pat is reflected in his drama. As Orinthia, Shaw presents her as the glorious white marble lady that she once was to him.
I tread the plains of heaven. Common women cannot come where I am, and common men find themselves out and slink away.
It must be magnificent to have the consciousness of a goddess without ever doing a thing to justify it.
Give me a goddess's work to do, and I will do it. But do not imagine that people become great by doing great things. They do great things because they are great, if the great things come along. But they'd be great just the same if the great things do not come along. If I never did a thing, but sit in this room, powder my face, and tell you what a clever fool you are, I should still be heavens high above all the millions of commonplace women who do their domestic duty, sacrifice themselves, run trade departments, and all the rest of the vulgarities. What are they for, these dull slaves? To keep the streets. To keep the streets swept for me. To enable me to reign over them in beauty like the stars, without having anything to do with their slavery, except to console it, to dazzle it, to enable them to forget it in adoring dreams of me. Am I not worth it? Look into my eyes and tell me the truth. Am I worth it or not?
Yes, of course. You are lovely, you are divine, and you are enormously amusing. Someday, perhaps, nature will graft the roses onto the cabbages and make every woman as enchanting as you. And then, what a glorious lark life will be.
Charlotte was very hurt by the play. She saw it at Malvern and commented,
Fools who came to pray remain to scoff.
But Shaw liked the scene and let it stand. For him, Orinthia was a realization of a vision that had haunted him all his life. Heartbreak House is much more ambiguous in its personal relations, and in it we can perhaps see something of the truth of Shaw and Mrs. Pat.
Addie has the diabolical family fascination. I began making love to her automatically. What am I to do? I can't fall in love, and I can't hurt a woman's feelings by telling her so when she falls in love with me. As women are always falling in love with my moustache, I get landed into all sorts of tedious and terrifying flirtations, in which I'm not a bit in earnest.
Oh, neither is Addie. She's never been in love in her life, though she's always been trying to fall in, head over ears. She's worse than you, because you at least had one real go with me.
That was a confounded madness. I can't believe that such an amazing experience is common. It has left its mark on me. I believe that is why I've never been able to repeat it.
We were frightfully in love with one another, Hector. It was such an enchanting dream that I've never been able to grudge it to you or anyone else since. I've invited all sorts of pretty women to the house on the chance of giving you another turn, but it has never come off.
I don't know that I wanted to come off. It was damn dangerous. You fascinated me, but I loved you, so it was heaven. This sister of yours fascinates me, but I hate her, so it is hell. I shall kill her if she persists.
Nothing will kill Addie. She's as strong as a horse. Now I'm going off to fascinate somebody.
A program of this kind can only suggest certain signposts into Shaw's work. His plays are written to prove a thesis, social, personal, or philosophical, not to explore people's characters for the sake of exploring. As a result, his characters tend to be fitted into a pattern, rather than fully rounded as people. But even when this is said, one must admit to a certain coldness in Shaw's women. Virgin mothers who make up for his own lack of maternal affection, sexless saints, remorseless predators driven purely by a blind urge of nature, fantasy projections based on women he had known, but nothing that a mature man dare give himself to with trust, nothing he could dare to love without being betrayed. The story of Shaw and women is a tragic one, and it leads directly to the lonely tragedy concealed within his comic work. He was forced to live in a world which for him was a world without love. Such a world is an agonizing and tragic place.
There's no animal in the world so hateful as a woman can be. Hushabye, you will not believe me when I tell you that I have loved this demon all my life. But God knows I have paid for it.
Cry, baby.
My friend, The Shotover sisters have two strange powers over men. They can make them love, and they can make them cry. Thank your stars you are not married to one of them.
And pray, Hector.
Ariadne, if you attempt to start on me, I'll choke you, do you hear? The cat and mouse game with the other sex is a good game, but I can play your head off at it. It is true that Napoleon said that woman is the occupation of the idle man, but he added that she is a relaxation of the warrior. Well, I am the warrior, so take care.
Well, really, Hector, I only did what you asked me to do.
How do you make that out, Pray?
Well, you called me in to manage Randall, didn't you? You said you couldn't do it yourself.
I did not ask you to drive the man mad.
He isn't mad. That's the way to manage him. If you were a mother, you'd understand.
Mother, what are you up to now?
Well, it's quite simple. When the children were naughty and got nerves, I smacked them. Just enough to give them a good cry and a healthy nervous shock. They went to bed afterwards all quite good. But I can't smack Randall. He's too big. So when he gets nerves and is naughty, I just rag him till he cries. He'll be all right now. Look, he's half asleep already.
I'm not. Oh, you're most cruel, Ariadne. But I suppose I must forgive you, as usual.
Is the explanation satisfactory, dread warrior?
Someday I shall kill you, if you go too far. I thought you were a fool.
Everybody does at first. But I'm not such a fool as I look.
Well, now, Randall, you must go to bed. You'll be a good boy in the morning.
I'll go to bed when I like. It isn't 10 yet.
It's long past 10. See, he goes to bed at once.
Is there any slavery on earth viler than this slavery of man to woman?
I'll not speak to her tomorrow. I'll not speak to her for another week. I'll give her such a lesson. I'll go straight to bed without bidding her good night.
You are under a spell, man. Old Shotover sold himself to the devil in Zanzibar. The devil gave him a black witch for a wife, and these two demon daughters are their mystical progeny. I am tied to Hesione, his apron strings, but I am her husband. And if I did go stark staring mad about her, at least we became man and wife. But why should you let yourself be dragged about and beaten by Ariadne? As a toy donkey is dragged about and beaten by a child, what do you get from it? Are you her lover?
You must not misunderstand me. In a higher sense, in a platonic sense.
Platonic sense. She makes you her servant. And when payday comes around, she bilks you. That is what you mean.
Well, if I don't mind, I don't see what business it is of yours. Besides, I tell you, I'm going to punish her. You shall see. I know how to deal with women. I'm really very sleepy. Say good night to Mrs. Hushabye for me, will you? Like a good chap. Good night.
Poor wretch. Oh, women. Women. Fall. Fall and crush.
If you'd known all I have had to put up with in my life, you'd say heaven defend me for living that man's life. However, I don't complain. It doesn't matter if one dies poor, which I'm not going to do, by the way, as long as your life is happy. And the way to have a happy life is to be too busy doing what you like all the time, having no time left to you to consider whether you're happy or not. And, oh, look here, I'm getting talking. I must stop. Well, it's very pleasant to have seen you all here, and to think that you are my audience and all that, because I'm a born actor myself. I like an audience. I'm like a child in that respect. Well, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.